What's up, guys? Welcome to today's video where I'm going to talk to you about the top 6 factors you should consider before purchasing a fishing kayak. Oh yeah. This is my kayak. Get yourself one. Fish on! Yeah! Oh my God! Look at that tank! That's a toad, brother. Golly! Before we jump into today's video, I do got to thank the folks at Visit North Alabama for helping make this video possible. It's my new home. I've moved here because I love everything about it. So head over to visitnorthalabama.org, download the destination guide, or click on all of the great links in there to plan your next North Alabama adventure. So guys, in my review videos, I go through a number of factors. But I wanted to do this video specifically to talk about those factors so that as I start doing more review videos, I can refer back to this video for that. So if you're watching this video because you're watching one of my review videos, here's a little bit more in-depth explanation of each of the 6 factors that I think you should consider before buying a fishing kayak, or 6 categories of factors. Some of them are going to have multiple factors within the factors. So anyway, let's just jump into it. First and foremost, I'm basing this on years of retail experience when I owned my own shop, working with a number of brands, having my finger on the pulse on social media, and then just, you know, obviously just hearing a lot of feedback through our Facebook group, which, by the way, if you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, do me a favor, click on the link in the description box and join the Kayak Bass Fishing group. It's the biggest kayak fishing community on Facebook, and it'll be better with you in it. That way you can share your experiences, the lessons that you've learned, and learn from folks that have also already learned those lessons. So enough about all that. Let's jump into it. So the first factor that I think you should consider when purchasing a fishing kayak, and again, this is a fishing kayak video, is stability, okay? And now these are also in the order that I think you should consider them, and I'll explain that along the way. But it does create an acronym. That was a happy accident, not necessarily that I put them in that order because it's spelled a word, okay? So I just want to make sure you guys understand that. So the acronym is SCRAPE, S-C-R-A-P-E, and the S stands for stability. Now, there's 2 different types of stability. There's primary stability and secondary stability. I will be doing a in-depth video on explaining the difference between those 2. And by and large, if you have really strong primary stability, that boat is going to be a little slower. It's going to have a little bit more drag. It's not going to perform as well in the paddle category. When we get to the P, we'll talk about performance, but stability for the purpose of this category consideration is the first factor that I think you should consider. And the S also stands for standability. In other words, if the kayak doesn't have the stability necessary for you to be able to stand, it's probably not a great fishing kayak, because I do think that down the road, even if you're just getting into kayak fishing, you're going to ultimately want to stand. Flipping, pitching, skipping, a lot of those presentations are just easier or more effective in a lot of cases if you can stand. Standing also factors into comfort. So therefore, I consider it a major category of stability, because if comfort's next, and it's the second most important factor, the ability to stand prolongs the comfort of your craft, regardless of how comfortable the seat is. I highly recommend adding a kayak cushion to your arsenal, maybe even a kayak cushion and a seat back. So add 2, or 2 for you to sit on, and that will prolong your comfort. I'll get into that under comfort, sorry, squirrel. But stability, okay? The ability to stand is in my opinion, a necessity to consider something a fishing kayak in today's market. Now, if you can't afford a kayak you can stand up in, especially if you're a bigger dude like me, then any kayak that you can get in that's going to get you in the water is going to do well. So don't wait 6 months to a year to purchase your fishing kayak just because of these factors. I'm just telling you, these are the factors in the order that you should consider them. Stability or standability. In other words, the boat should be stable enough that you don't have to think about it while you're fishing, both sitting and standing. It should be stable enough for your comfort zone. A lot of really advanced guys like myself like to say, hey, sacrifice some initial stability for better secondary stability so you get a better performance out of the boat. But if your skill set doesn't take advantage of that, and you're nervous all day long because that initial instability, because it doesn't have great initial stability, makes you uncomfortable, then you're not comfortable. And that's the number 2 factor. So get a boat that is comfortable for you. If you've got to start with something bigger and more stable and wider and slower in the beginning to increase your comfort level, then by all means, that's something that you need to do. So stability, standability, number 1 feature, factor that I think you should consider. Number 2 factor that I think you should consider is comfort, okay? Whether that is how low or high the seat is, whether that's how comfortable the actual seat is. And again, going back to standability, if you can stand up in the kayak, you can actually get away with a little bit less comfortable seat. What I mean by that is, if every hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever your level of comfort is, you can stand up, kind of stretch your legs, stretch your back, change positions, it's going to prolong the comfort of your kayak overall. So be sure to consider standability in your comfort factor. If you know you're going to sit down all day, you know you're not going to stand, then that seat comfort becomes that much more important. So let's talk about some of the factors of comfort in a seat. 1, if you're a big dude, width is a big factor. If that seat is so narrow that you feel like you're sitting on top of it, or you feel like you're being squished into it, you're not going to be comfortable. If that seat is so low down on the boat that your legs are up above your hip bone, so in other words, here's your hip socket and here's your ankle, you know, and your heart's got to pump blood upstream to your feet, or your legs are extended out, which is going to, you know, potentially cause nerve problems and all those other things, especially in bigger dudes and older guys or gals like myself, then you're going to want to get that seat elevated, okay? One of the things that I can tell you that is a big deal for me is that in the Bonafide SS127, I have really great seat height, but you can't just jack a seat up if the boat's not designed for it. You know, boats like the New Canoe Unlimited with that ability to rotate, that increases comfort. Seats like on the Old Town series, the Old Town Sportsman series, are very, very, very comfortable. And so comfort has come a long ways, but just make sure that you consider that factor before you move into, you know, the other stuff out there. So number 1 factor, stability. Number 2 factor, comfort. And again, how high you're sitting, how stable the boat is, and all that are important. So stability and comfort, in my opinion, kind of go hand in hand. And don't forget again about standability. So just make sure that you seriously consider the comfort factor and comfort for the type of boat it is. Comfort for a paddle boat versus a pedal boat versus a power boat is 3 or 4 different things, and we'll talk about that when we get into the P, which is performance and propulsion. But just really consider comfort, okay? If you're not comfortable, you're going to spend less time in the boat, you're going to be less happy, you're going to be less, you know, gratified from the kayak fishing experience. So stability, comfort, number 1 and number 2 factors. Now we're going to move on to rigability and reliability. This one is split, okay? In fact, when I first came out with it, I couldn't decide which one was the more important factor. As kayak anglers, we all need to rig the boats to fit our style of fishing. So I think rigability wins out, okay? But a very close second to that is reliability. Now, let's get into rigability first, and then we'll jump into the reliability portion of it, okay? So rigability. How well does the boat rig out for your style of fishing? Does it have the ability for you to add things where you need them, or does it already come with it? And again, each of these factors all kind of tie to each other, because rigability is going to tie to the letter, the A, which is affordability, and you have to do a balancing act. So let me talk about that. Rigability is really how well outfitted is the boat for the style of fishing that you need to do or you want to do, or how well could you outfit it, and is it more cost effective to buy the boat as a base model and add everything you need, or is it more cost effective to buy it completely you know, rigged out? So rigged out already, or buy it and outfit it yourself. Those are going to come up in affordability, but rigability and the ability to set the boat up for the style of fishing that you want to do is a big deal. Now, that pretty much is self-explanatory, and we'll talk more about that as we do specific boats, but rigability is huge. Now, reliability. Reliability is actually split into 2 categories. In other words, is this boat reliable for the type of fishing that you're looking to do? And is the boat reliable from the standpoint of Are things going to break on it? Is it going to leave you stranded, and things along those lines? Ironically enough, some of the most expensive boats on the market have what I consider some of the biggest reliability issues. One of the major reasons I've steered clear of pedal drives for a long time is because if I have a motorized kayak that paddles well and my motor breaks, I just paddle back to the boat ramp. No big deal. But a lot of issues come up when you start adding features. It's just the nature of it. If it's mechanical or electrical and it's made by humans, it can fail. And so that is another factor that you're going to have to consider very strongly, is reliability. Do some YouTube searches, do some Google searches. But here's where else reliability comes in. Obviously, if the boat breaks and you don't get home, that's a problem. If you're fishing a tournament, if you're guiding a fishing trip, if you're on a guided fishing trip, using your own watercraft, and it breaks, you pretty much have lost that investment in that tournament. You've lost that investment in that trip, and let's just be real. Even if it's just your weekend, because you've worked hard all week and you look forward to fishing and now your boat's broken, you lost that opportunity. So reliability is a big one. But one of the things that I urge you guys to look into very extensively these days is warranty. Man, the world is on fire with warranty debates, warranty changes, warranty upgrades, downgrades, side grades, whatever you want to call it. But your dealer is your number one line of defense for warranties. I've said this analogy for a long time. If my Ram breaks, I'm not calling Ram, I'm calling a dealer. Okay, so the person you purchase the boat from, or the dealer that you purchase it from, really should be your first line of defense from the warranty standpoint. But reliability has two heads. Is that boat reliable for the type of fishing that you're doing? For example, I love the new Crescent Shoaly, okay, for example. Great river boat. Would I take that boat offshore? Absolutely not. So it's not reliable for that type of fishing. So what you need to do is make sure that the boat is reliable for the type or types of fishing that you're doing, but also thinking about the reliability of the boat. Talk to your dealer before you buy a brand. Hey, have you had issues with warranties with this boat in the past? Has the manufacturer stood behind it? Have you had to take care of a lot of warranties on your own? And if so, what is your policy on that? So rigability, reliability, two major categories you've got to consider. But again, reliability has two heads. Is the boat good for the type of fishing that you're going to do? And is it also going to is it going to strand you? Are you going to be left dissatisfied because the boat doesn't stand up to the type of fishing that you're going to put it through? So again, another major consideration, and put warranty in that category. I'll talk about it at the end under everything else, but really it should be thought about under the reliability standpoint. Next up is affordability. Now, the reason affordability isn't number one is because I do think you should consider the level of stability, the level of comfort, and the level of rigability, and then decide which boat you can afford in that category. I think a lot of times people have a disconnect between what they can afford and what they want in a boat. So consider what you want in a boat first, and then go look for the boat that is the most affordable for you in that category. And again, I see a lot of times people skimp on certain things in the beginning because it's cheaper, and then they spend more money in the long run adding those features back to the boat after it's all said and done. And so again, just think about that from the affordability standpoint. I think that there's a lot of people that say that boat's too expensive or that boat's really cheap, and I don't really think they understand what they're talking about when it comes to determining cheap or expensive. I think if you get a really good deal on a Hobie Pro Angler that's $3,000, that's cheap for a Hobie Pro Angler. But if you paid $1,000 for a Pelican Catch, that's cheaper, but it's not more affordable. So you have to think about that from the context of getting what you paid for. Next up is performance. And I think a lot of times when it comes to a performance standpoint, I hear this a lot. That boat's really slow. Which way? Is it slow pedaled, paddled, or under power? And so the P is performance, but it also comes down to propulsion, and you should consider the propulsion based on the type of propulsion you're going to use primarily. A stern mounted motor and a bow mounted motor are going to power the exact same watercraft completely different you're going to get a different type of performance. Again, I'm going to mention the Kayak Bass Fishing Group for a reason. Get in the Kayak Bass Fishing Group, find somebody near you, and if they have the boat rigged out the way that you're looking to try it, you know, reach out to them about trying out their boat for a demo. Join your local club or ambassador club or group, and, you know, reach out to them about when they're having a tournament, and maybe meet up with some of the anglers when they're coming off the water and try their boat, and then help them load it up after the fact or something along those lines. And then I'm also going to be encouraging a lot of our groups this year to have demo days for this very reason. And then we're going to be having several demos late spring through the summer and into the fall here at Ditto Landing in North Alabama. So stay tuned for that. I'll be posting that up on kayakbassfishing.com, and I'll be sharing it here and through my socials. So performance, though, should really come down to the primary propulsive method that you're going to use. In other words, a boat that pedals well probably doesn't paddle as well. A boat that paddles well will probably propel itself under a motor a lot better than one that was designed to be pedaled and then added a motor to it. If you want the 1-2 effect of being able to paddle and pedal and power, you're going to have to kind of consider all those factors. It's just frustrating to me when I see somebody say, for example, they see a boat, oh, that boat's slow. Slow what? Slow paddled? And it's a pedal drive boat. It's not supposed to pedal or paddle as well, okay? So again, consider your form of propulsion. My vote personally is that you always try to find a boat that you can also paddle if you need to. Even if it's a pedal drive or a boat that you plan on using a motor, always plan for the fact that one of those two things could fail on you when it really comes down to it. So performance really boils down to, again, in my opinion, the type of propulsion that you're looking for. So consider that from the standpoint also of affordability. Add these, each one of these all kind of work together. But, you know, if you're going to buy a cheaper kayak because you plan on putting a motor on it, then you buy a cheaper motor. Think about the fact that you also have to buy a battery. Think about the fact that you have to mount it. You know, all of those little things that go into it, they all kind of work together. So be sure that you consider each of these factors, completely before you decide to make a purchase. So again, recap before we jump into the last one, which is everything else: stability, comfort, rigability, reliability, and performance. And performance is primarily focused on the type of propulsion that you're looking to use, paddle, pedal, or power. Last thing is everything else. And there's a few factors that come into everything else that a lot of people think maybe should be considered earlier. And I'm not going to disagree with them. I just think that they should, for the most part, be considered last. Number one, weight. Okay, weight and transport go hand in hand. Okay, so is the boat too heavy for you to transport? Well, does that mean you're gonna have to trailer it? Can you get it on top of your car? Can you get it in the back of your truck? So for me, the weight isn't considered early on because I want you to consider all those other factors. I would rather have a stable, comfortable, riggable, affordable, and boat that propels the way that I want it to before I worry about the weight, because there's a thing called the wow factor, weight on the water, which means once it's on the water, what does it weigh? Nothing for the most part, unless you're dragging it through shoals and up and down rapids and things like that. It doesn't weigh anything once it's on the water. So would you rather struggle a little bit to get the boat on the water and then have 12 hours of comfort, 12 hours of stability, 12 hours of great rigability and all that other stuff and good performance? Or would you rather save a few pounds and then sacrifice those other things? So again, that's why I put it at the end. Transport's obviously a factor that you have to consider. But I think for the most part, almost all kayaks can be transported the same way every other one could. Is it as easy? No. Is it as easy to get a RS-117 on the roof of a car as it is to get a autopilot 136? Absolutely not. But again, it's a few minutes worth of work versus a whole day's worth of comfort, stability, and the other factors that you should really consider. So that's why I put these things at the end, but I want to make sure that you do consider the everything else. Storage. How and where are you going to store this boat? Are you going to store it on top of your car? Are you going to store it in the bed of your truck? Are you going to leave it on a trailer? Are you going to put it in your garage? Are you going to leave it outside? All of those things are situations where I see a lot of people in the group post up a comment, hey, I just got this new boat. How do you guys recommend that I store it? again, I think that's something you should really consider before you make your purchase, but it's in the everything else category because I think you can work around that based on considering all the other factors first. I'm going to talk about warranty again under everything else because I don't think that we consider it enough before we make a purchase. A lot of guys and gals go out there and buy a boat, get it all rigged up and spend, you know, a couple $1,000s getting it to where they want it, and then the boat breaks or cracks or has an issue and they're stuck with a worthless boat, a boat that the manufacturer won't stand behind, or they lost all of that initial investment. And so to me, do some deep dive research on the warranty and the reliability of the boat that you purchase. So obviously consider that under reliability, but it's also under that everything else category. Be sure that you really do some research into it. Another thing that falls into place under the everything else, you know, is back to rigability, but the ability to upgrade the boat. Okay, yes, this is considered under rigability, but things like, can you elevate the seat from the standard, you know, seat height, and is the boat designed to accommodate that? Can you change the configuration of the boat? Are there aftermarket products that'll make it better? Things like that. So again, that also falls under the everything else. And then I think last under the everything else category, and the reason that I'm saving this for last is probably going to be the most controversial part of this whole thing, and it's up to you to decide what level of value do you place on it. Point of origin, like where's the boat made? Who is the manufacturer? You know, is it a American made boat? Is it an imported boat? Is it a hybrid? Even if it's imported, does it have a family owned factory that, even though it's made overseas, it's different than the other things that are made overseas? So do a little bit of a deep dive into that portion of the boat factors that you determine before you make it, and if that's important to you. And if it's not, then obviously that's why I saved it for last. I personally believe in trying to buy American-made kayaks as much as I can, you know, here and there, but I've also used imported rods and reels, and you know, I've talking to you guys on a camera that definitely wasn't made in America. So I know that that's a great, you know, thump your chest thing when you can. And so again, if that's a factor that matters to you, most of these websites and most of these brands are pretty transparent about it. So that's also the last thing I think you should consider in the everything else category. Unless it's really important to you, then make sure that you consider it first. So appreciate you guys watching this video, and I will see y'all in the next one.